guys, welcome to Retracing My Africa. I'm Dr. Muyoka. Karibu sana. Now, in today's video, guys, I'm going to be talking about how the US immigration policy has been evolving over the years and what we may expect come 2025 when President Donald Trump takes office in January. So guys, the way I've organized my presentation today, I want to talk a little bit about the World War and the ways, the World War I, and the ways it shaped immigration policy in the United States of America. It's very important for us to understand history because, you know, as we all know, history has a way of repeating itself. So we must learn from it. We must learn from history. In between 1914 and 1918, the World War was going on. And during that time of the war, a lot was happening in Europe. People were being killed, people were dying. It was a desperate situation. The war created a lot of poverty and desperation. It created hunger. It created disease. You had an epidemic, a tuberculosis epidemic that impacted many communities. People died. People were so sick, and people were moving to escape this situation, the conflict, the sickness, the hunger, the poverty. And so you had people moving. So for example, you had the Irish who were greatly affected. One of the countries that was most affected in Europe was Ireland. And so you had the Irish who were moving from Ireland to the UK, looking for work, better life, better opportunity, and just escaping the environment that they were in at the time, the conflict and the war. And so many of these people ended up in America as well. Not just the Irish, but a lot of other Europeans, people that were fleeing the Holocaust in Germany, you know, the Polish, you know, the Jews, they all ended up going to America, okay? And so by the time we get to the 20s, guys, the Americans were becoming jittery about immigration. And so they decided to change their laws. Yeah, they decided to change their laws so that they could have control over who was coming in. And they had an idea of who they wanted to allow in and who they wanted to shut out. So during the presidency, the presidency of Republican President Calvin Coolidge, he was serving between 1923 and 1929. During his term, this is when we see some serious change in immigration. In 1924, the Republicans managed to pass a bill known as the Johnson and Reed Act of 1924. This bill basically set in place what I call a racialized quota system. So now this racialized quota system, I call it racialized because it was based on race. So people were being allowed to come into the United States of America based on race, and it was a quota system because they had a cap on how many people could come in from what country, okay? And once that number was reached, no more of these individuals could come in. You'll be interested to know that majority of those who were being allowed to come in were people that were of European heritage from Northern Europe and Western Europe. These are the main people that were being welcomed to come in. As long as you were literate, you could read and write and you could do work, you were let in. Then those who were not allowed to come in were people who were non-white, people of other races, Asians, people who are coming from Africa, people who are coming from Latin America. Although initially Latina people had, you know, were already in America because that was their land. Part of it was their land. But over time, now the American government wanted to control how many of them could come from. Now the new boundaries, those who were shut out because of the new boundaries, they could no longer come in as they had done previously, okay? So that was the situation that was going on in the United States of America at the time. And over time, as the Republicans were leading, more and more people of European ancestry came in. They set up a program that would allow people to immigrate into the United States of America based on family relations. So the family-based green card. So Europeans that were back in Europe were able to make their way to the United States of America because of this family-based visa. And also for work, I want to say the employment, the employment-based visa, that was another way that people were coming in from Europe. So they ended up having a very large population of people. I'm going to read you the countries that they were coming from, just, for context. People were coming from the British Isles, they were coming from the UK, that is, and Ireland, and they were also coming from Germany, from France, they were coming from Italy, from Sweden, from Norway, from Finland, from Portugal, Spain. They were coming from all these countries. That's where they were coming from. Italy, I think I mentioned Italy. So you end up having a large population of these guys, yeah? Then, now, when the Democrats took over and things began to change, the dynamics started changing. So you had more Latinas and more Asian people coming in. And of course, a small population of Africans people, but very tiny at that time. And so we started to see change in 1952 when the Democrats came in and began to change these laws. This was under President Harry Truman. For those of you who don't know, guys, President Truman was leading the United States of America between 1945 and 1953. So this law came in towards the tail end of his second term, I guess. Yeah. So his party members managed to pass a bill in Congress that allowed them to remove these clauses in the bill that were racial in nature, racialized in nature, that were keeping other races out. So they managed to remove these clauses out of the law, and they were able to now put in place a law that would allow people of other nationalities and other ethnicities and races to come into America. And while this was happening, they also managed to reduce or limit the number of people that had been coming from, the Western Hemisphere. So those countries that had been privileged previously, now they couldn't come in using this program anymore. So you had more of the Latin Americans and the Asians coming in. And so over the years, the Latinas grew in number, Asian people also grew in number. They were coming in through the families-based programs. They would come in and then they would apply for their relations back home to also come in. And they also coming in using the work-based visas. So that's kind of the history behind this. This was before the diversity program came in. But then towards the late 80s, like around 1986 and towards 1990, that's when now the idea of diversifying came in a different way. Because you see, what was happening, the concerns that the Democratic Party had was that the current program that they had, the green card program that they had, was allowing people to come in on family-based visas. That means that you had to have family ties in the US to be able to qualify. So if you didn't have any family members in the United States of America, you were disqualified. So it was sort of discriminatory in a way. So they tried to introduce a program where people could still come in to the United States without necessarily having family ties, but people who were deemed to be they could help diversify American society and also bring in their skill and their knowledge and their culture. So that is how essentially the diversity lottery green card was introduced in the United States of America. Okay, so if you didn't know, now you know.